faithful to the Great Council were redistributed among the other houses. The temple says the ancient legendary evil beings that dwell beneath the Red Mountain in the Dag of Ur region are the original leaders of this extinct house, sustained by some powerful evil sorceries. Okay, other references. I know that he mentioned those books to me actually. Very interesting. So I guess that's it is somewhere. Their lair must be somewhere at the central part of the island where this great volcano is located. Okay. Alright, let's report to Chaos.
I'd be happy to talk. My pleasure, really.
Yes, it's about orders. These notes are from Hestfed? Excellent. I trust he didn't work you too hard for them. Oh, you know, I was forced to kill some of the smugglers in the ruins. So I guess that is some kind of hard work. I'll look them over in more detail later, but now I have some new orders for you. Really? Okay. I have glanced at Hesfet and Tabolis notes. They cover the sixth house admirably, but not the Nerevarin cult. Hop on over to the Balmora Mages Guild. It's right next to the Balmora Fighters Guild. Get Shangra Mosgob to tell you what she knows about the Nerevarin. She'll have some silly errand for you. Do what she asks and report back when she's given you the information. Really? Silly errand. From an orc. She's very smart for an orc. An unhealthy interest in the... She has an unhealthy interest in the dark arts, perhaps, but very smart. She's always worried that the temple will bust in and stick her in a fire, and worried with good reason. Oh, really? Okay. What do you know about the sixth house? A trusted informant says they're a secret cult associated with some strange events recently, and more important, my informant thinks these recent disturbances are related in some way to the Nerevarin prophecies. Really? The illiterate Ashlanders pass down their customs and history in the form of poetic verses. Among the things they preserve in the form of poetic verses, among the things they preserve in verse are the dreams and prophetic visions of their wise women, in particular the verses that foretell the coming of the Nerevarin. But I don't know much about it, and that's why I'm sending you to find it. Okay. What about the... Okay, he don't know. He probably don't know. I guess. Nerevarin. Some Dunmer believe that an orphan, an outcast, a youth born on a certain day to uncertain parents, will one day unite all the tribes of the Dunmer, drive out the invaders of Morrowind, and re-establish the ancient laws and customs of the Dark Elven nations. They call this orphan and outcast the Nerevarin, and say the Nerevarin will be a reincarnation of the long-dead Dunmer general and first consul Lord Indoril Nerevar. Really? Okay. Interesting. Alright, you mentioned Mages Guild. Alright, it's 1 PM. I guess I could do this. Although, I have killed, I think, how many people? 4 people. Got a Few scratches here and there. I guess I deserved a bit of a rest. Okay. Time to rent a room. Lay on the bed. Read a story. Maybe sleep a bit. And then proceed. So, I haven't read that one. It's called The Ransom of Zarek. The Ransom of Zarek. Ancient Tales of Dwemer, Part 1, by Marobar Sul. Jelemil stood in her garden and read the letter her servant had brought to her. The bouquet of just roses in her hand fell to the ground. For a moment it was as if all birds had ceased to sing and a cloud had passed over the sky. Her carefully cultivated and structured haven seemed to flood over with darkness. "Behave thy son," it read. "We will be in touch with thee shortly with our ransom demands." Zarek had never made it as far as Agon after all. One of the brigands on the road, orcs probably, or a cursed Dunmer, must have seen his well-appointed carriage and taken him hostage. Jelemel clutched at a post for support, wondering if her boy had been hurt. He was but a student, not the sort to fight against well-armed men. But had they beaten him? It was more than a mother's heart could bear to imagine. "Don't tell me they sent the ransom note so quickly," called a family voice, and a familiar face appeared through the hedge. It was Zarek. Jelemel hurried to embrace her boy, tears running down her face. "What happened?" she cried. I thought thou had been kidnapped." "I was," said Zarek. 3 huge soaring Nords attacked by carriage on the Frimworn Pass. Brothers, as I learned, named Matthäus, Ulin, and Kork. Thou should have seen these men, mother. Each one of them would have had trouble fitting through the front door, I can tell thee." "What happened?" Jeremil repeated. "Were thou rescued?" "I thought about waiting for that, but I knew they would send off a ransom note, and I know how thou dost worry, so I remembered what my mentor at Agon always said about remaining calm, observing thy surroundings and looking for thy opponent's weakness." Zarek grinned. It took a while though, because these fellows were truly monsters, and then, when I listened to them bragging to one another, I realized that vanity was their weakness. "What did thou do?" "They had me chained at their camp in the woods, not far from Kale, on a high knoll overlooking a wide river. I heard one of them, Kork, telling the others that it will take a better part of an hour to swim across the river and back. They were nodding in agreement when I spoke up. "I could swim that river and back in 30 minutes, I said. "Impossible," said Kork. "I can swim faster than a little whelp like thee." So it was agreed that we would dive off the cliff, swim to the center island, and return. As we went to our respective rocks, Kork took it upon himself to lecture me about all the fine points of swimming, the importance of synchronized movements of the arms and legs for maximum speed, how essential it was to breathe after only third of or fourth stroke, not too often to slow thyself down, but not too often to lose one's air. I nodded and agreed to all his fine points. Then we dove off the cliffs. I made it to the island and back in a little over an hour, but Kork never returned. He had dashed his brains at the rocks at the base of the cliff. I had noticed the telltale undulations of underwater rocks and had taken the diving rock on the right. But thou returned? Asked Jelemil, astounded. Was that not then when thou escaped? It was too risky to escape then, said Zarek. They could have easily caught me again, and I wasn't keen to be blamed for Cork's disappearance. I said I did not know what happened to him, and after some searching they decided he had forgotten about the race and had swum ashore to hunt for food. They could not see how I could have had anything to do with his disappearance, as fully visible as I was throughout my swim. The two brothers began making camp along the rocky cliff edge, picking an ideal location so that I would not be able to escape. One of the brothers, Matthias, began commenting on the quality of the soil and the gradual incline of the rock that circled around the bay below. Ideal, he said, for a foot race. I expressed my ignorance of the sport, and he was keen to give me details of the proper technique for running a race. He made absurd faces, showing how one must breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, how to bend one's knees to the proper angle on the rise, the importance of sure foot placement. Most important, he explained, was that the runner keep an aggressive but not too strenuous pace if one intends to win. It is fine to run in second place through the race, he said, provided one has the willpower and strength to pull out in the end. It was an enthusiastic student, and I was an enthusiastic student, and Matthias decided that we ought to run a quick race around the edge of the bay before night fell. Ulin told us to bring back some firewood when we came back. We began at once down the path, skirting the cliff below. I followed his advice about breath, gait, and foot placement, but I ran with my power right from the start. Despite his much longer legs, I was a few paces ahead as we wound the first corner. With his eyes on my back, my face did not see the gap in the rock that I jumped over. He plummeted over the cliff before he had a chance to cry out. I spent a few minutes gathering some twigs before I returned to Ulin at camp. Now thou were just showing off, frowned Jelemil. Surely that would have been a good time to escape. Thou might think so, agreed Zarek, but thou had to see the topography. A few large trees and then nothing but shrubs. Ulin will have noticed my absence and caught up with me in no time, and I will have had a hard time explaining my face's absence. However, the brief forage around the area allowed me to observe some of the trees close up, and I could formulate my final plan. When I got back to camp with a few twigs, I told Ulin that my face was slow coming along, dragging a large dead tree behind him. Ulin scoffed at his brother's strength, saying it would take him time to pull up a leaf tree by the roots and drop it on the bonfire. I expressed reasonable doubt. I'll show thee, he said, ripping up a 10-foot tall specimen effortlessly. But that's scarcely a sapling, I objected. I thought thou could rip up a tree. His eyes followed mine to a magnificent, heavy-looking one at the edge of the clearing. Ulin grabbed it and began to shake it with a tremendous force to loosen its roots from the dirt. With that, he loosened the hive from the uppermost branches, dropping it down onto his head. That was when I made my escape, mother, said Zarek. In conclusion, showing a little schoolboy pride. While Matthias and Cork were at the base of the cliff, and Ulin was flailing about, engulfed by a swarm. Jelemil embraced her son once again. Publisher's note. I was reluctant to publish the works of Marobar Sul, but when the University of Gwilim press asked me to edit this edition, I decided to use this as an opportunity to set the record straight once and for all. Scholars do not agree on the exact date of Marble Soul's work, but it is generally agreed that they were written by the playwright for Gore Philim, famous for popular comedies and romances during the interregnum between the fall of the First Cyrodiilic Empire and the rise of the Tiber Septim. The current theory holds that Philim heard a few genuine dreamer tales and adapted them to the stage in order to make money, along with rewritten versions of many of his own plays. Gore Philim created the persona of Marble Soul, who could translate the dreamer language in order to add some sort of validity to the work and make it even more valuable to the gullible. Note that while Marble Soul and his works became the subject of heated controversy, there are no reliable records of anyone actually meeting Marble Soul, nor was there anyone of that name employed by the Mages Guild, the School of Julianos, or any other intellectual institution. In any case, the dreamer in most of the tales of Marble Soul bear little resemblance to the fearsome and faithful race that frightened even the Dunmer, Nords and Redguards into submission and built ruins that even now have yet to be understood. Very interesting.